I'll be handling technical aptitude 1, okay, for your class. And as you all are very much aware, in today's world, placements plays a very important role, right? Uh, Before you finish your program or your degree, before you complete your degree, it's expected that you are placed, and because life outside is still difficult, okay, so the easiest thing to do is get a job while in campus, right? Fine. So this subject or this theme of technical aptitude is towards reaching that goal, okay. So what I will do is I had prepared few questionnaire kind of thing, okay, and I'm going to discuss that. Uh, of course, few concepts you might learn in your upcoming semesters, okay, but then this is going to be a different dimension altogether, right? So let me just pull up that as we discuss for today's class. So I've lined up a few questionnaire kind of thing here, okay, and we can actually look into this, uh, and we can try and understand as to what this is telling us about, okay. So I have an unregulated power supply, okay, DC amplifier, comparator, voltage reference, and feedback network, okay. Um, so if a question is asked, okay, of course, in your interviews and all, you might be asked to draw a diagram, okay, and probably explain it, or a missing block can be given somewhere here, okay, and told what could be this block, okay. So we will just look into it, okay, and we will try and understand as to what this circuit is all about. The voltage reference stage provides fixed unvarying voltage, which is derived from unregulated input. Can someone tell me what is an unregulated power supply? There's a difference between regulated and unregulated. Yes, what's the difference?
So regulated might be constant voltage, constant value of voltage supply at all times.
Yeah. So that is nothing but called regulated. You normally connect your stabilizers, right? So that is used to control all the spikes, the voltage differences, okay, the current spikes. So this is going to nullify those things. Basically, it's a rectifier inside, okay. So you would have studied these half wave rectifiers, full wave rectifiers, right, in your curriculum. So this unregulated supply is actually given, okay, and you have a voltage reference, okay, stating that if it's at this level, then I call it high. If it's at this level, then it's low. If it crosses this level, then I'm going to remove the spike off. So all these parameters are set here in voltage reference. Then you have a DC amplifier, okay, something which amplifies if in case the signal is not too high here, okay, it's been amplified, and you have a feedback network. So basically, why do we need a feedback? I think we are very much studying this in our theoretical subjects, right? Feedback is a very important concept, isn't it? So why is feedback needed? Yeah, go on. Feedback, why is it needed? China.
So to increase the bandwidth, or sorry, to increase the gain,
To
or
increase,
to give a lot of input impedance.
Actually, there are two types of feedback, as you all know, right? One is the positive feedback and the negative feedback. Now, if you take op-amp, for example, how much is the gain?
1.
The gain is infinite, right? So we do not need so much of gain. So what we do is we connect to the negative terminal, okay? The part of the output is connected to the negative terminal, right? So that becomes your negative feedback. Now coming to the question, why is it done? Is because, okay, if in case I give a positive feedback, okay, if a positive feedback is given, then that will increase my oscillations. I do not want that to happen. So that's the reason I give a negative feedback, whereby just infinite gain. I do not want 100,000 times of gain, right? So I want to reduce this gain, and in the process, I make the system stable, right? So that's the reason I use feedback network. Okay. So feedback can be depending upon how the system is. If the system is given, giving us too much of gain, then we give a negative feedback and bring down the gain, and ultimately make the system stable. If in case the gain is not too much, right, it's not high, then I give a positive feedback. And then generally speaking, okay, positive feedback is not good at all. Okay, it increases the oscillations. But then if the gain is too low, if you want to boost up the gain, then in that case, then you can give your positive feedback, right? So I hope this concept is clear. Any doubts till the concepts that we have discussed so far? Is it all fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The other input is derived from the output voltage of the stabilizer. Okay, so you have the input, okay, which is taken. This input will vary in voltage with the output voltage of the stabilizer, right? So depending on how much of levels of voltage that you have given there, okay, accordingly it's going to vary. These two voltages are compared by the comparator. So comparator has two things. One is the reference and the other one is the from the feedback. Okay, and this feedback is actually, one is connected to the reference section, okay, and the other one is connected to the amplifier. So comparator will compare both of these things. Basically, this comparator will act like a differential amplifier. Okay. So what is meant by a differential amplifier? Yes.
So when the difference of the two inputs is taken in as a single input into the op amp,
The difference is actually amplified. Okay. So say for example, I have 5 and 3. Okay. So if you minus both, minus 2, so that is, amplified. So the difference is amplified. So hence it's called differential amplifier. It is compared, and the relative difference between the two input voltages, so that is being amplified. The voltage is used to control the effective resistance of DC amplifier, and thus the voltage drop across it, right? So whatever that we are seeing here, if in case the voltages are too high, then the resistance is involved in the amplifier. Okay, it can be RE, which is your emitter resistance, or it can be RC, which is your collector resistance, right? So if the voltages are high, then the currents are also going to be high. Why do you think if the voltages are high, the currents are going to be high? Can you tell me? Why is it so?
Because of low output impedance.
Because the difference, okay, the difference between these inputs are high. Okay, so if there is a potential difference, okay, so the other word for voltage is potential difference. So if there is a high potential difference, okay, so you have the options for these electrons to roll down the hill. Okay, so which means it is moving from a higher potential to a lower potential. right? So hence in this process, these electrons actually tend to move on a little faster. Okay, so ultimately flow of electrons is your current. When the regulated input voltage increases or decreases, the voltage reference remains constant. Now I cannot change the voltage reference, and hence the name, right? So I would have maintained a particular value, and only that should be maintained, nothing else apart from that. But the load tends to change, tends to increase or decrease. Okay, so based on this network here, okay, based on the feedback network, okay, the load is going to increase or decrease. Thus the feedback voltage also tends to increase or decrease, which is very obvious, right? Because the amplifier is connected, right? It has a reference. This part cannot change, but this part can change. So based on the feedback network, okay, the load is also going to change. The change in difference between the voltage and the reference voltage is sensed by the comparator, changing its output voltage so that resistance of DC amplifier increases or decreases, right? So this is sensed by comparator. So comparator has the voltage reference and it has the feedback network. So this is going to be compared, and ultimately it has an impact on the amplifier. So how does it have an impact? Just like I told, with the resistances, with the voltage levels, and ultimately causing high currents. So high currents, high drop across resistances. And what are the resistances that an amplifier can have? If you can recall, yes. Let's take BJT for example. What kind of resistances can it have? Volt the resistance across the emitter and collector, right? Okay. Hence the voltage dropped across the DC amplifier increases or decreases, causing the load voltage to increase or decrease, maintaining the load voltage constant. Okay. So this network is trying to get the voltages constant, okay, by varying the kind of load. So if in case the load takes up a lot of voltages, then the currents are obviously pushed into the load, right? So it's kind of a dynamic load that we have here. Then a question can be asked, how are optical fibers better than copper cables? Do you have an answer for that? Can you tell me the difference between OFCs and copper cables? Have you seen them, OFCs and copper cables? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then can you tell me about it?
So OFCs don't get corroded like copper cables.
Very good.
So they have a longer life.
Good.
And light travels faster.
Okay.
So we get a faster intent because of that.
Okay, that's good. You have told the pros. What about the cons? Yes, go on.
No, so another advantage is data loss also is very less.
Correct. That's right. Now, can you tell me the disadvantages?
It's very expensive.
Good. And then? Don't you think it is more fragile than copper cables? Right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's more fragile, right? So you need to handle them with a lot of care because they're very sensitive, right? So unlike copper cables, you can pull them, twist them, connect them, but this kind of connections between optical cables are difficult. I'm not saying that it's impossible. Okay, it's called fusion, arc fusion. So with that process, you can actually connect to optical fibers, but then the efficiency comes down, the performance comes down. Okay, because it's all about the light. Okay, the reflection of light, and the refractive index that comes into picture. Fine. So we will just look a few major points. OFCs operate at high light frequencies compared to copper. Okay, so we can have very high frequencies because light travels very fast, as the friends have suggested. Bandwidth is determined by the carrier frequency, so fibers have a greater bandwidth. Right? So what's the advantage of having a higher bandwidth? Is it an advantage to have a higher bandwidth?
A large amount of
So
data
this
can travel.
Correct.
range increases.
Correct. The range is increased. We can have a lot of data that can pass through, right? So due to which, the capacity increases. So it's like, you have subscribed for 100 Mbps, but then if you want to increase the speed to about 200, then the bandwidth has to increase. So that's the importance of bandwidth. If the bandwidth increases, the speed can increase because it can accommodate more signals. Right? So ultimately, what's a bandwidth? It is the difference between dash and dash. What is it?
The highest and lowest frequency.
Correct, correct. It's the differences between the higher frequency and the lower frequency. So ultimately, that range of frequencies, okay, between these upper frequency and lower frequencies becomes your bandwidth. Okay, fine. So this can go up to gigahertz. Okay, these days, if you can recall the transformation of technology right from 1G, okay, the first generation, where you could only make calls, right? So that wasn't sufficient. So they moved on to 2G, okay, wherein you could even send SMS, right? So that was not possible with the first generation of networks. And with the second generation, okay, instead of calling, if you have just short messages, just meet me at the park at 9 o'clock, something like that. And for that, you don't want to make a call. That facility pitched in the second generation, right? Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
So I just wanted to know the difference between, sir, if 4G is the speed and 200 Mbps the data. Like, I'm not understanding the difference between those two.
I will come there. Okay, I will come there. Okay, fine. So 2G was able to, give us this kind of facility, right? And then we moved on. We wanted a little bit of internet, right? So we had, GPRS pitching in 2G, right? And that was not really quite sufficient. So we wanted to increase the speed. So GPRS became edge, right? And we called it 2.5G, okay, something which is between 2 and 3, right? So this edge was able to give us phenomenal speed. Of course, in most of the countries, the speeds were great, right? So it was about 180 to 200 kbps, okay? It was still in kbps those days. So 2G was giving us that facility. And then, we wanted a little more in probably 2000, the year 2000. Okay, so we came up with 3G, and now the bandwidth has increased, the frequencies have increased. You're able to give in a lot of data, right? So a video calling feature was added, right? Now to transmit video from one point to another point, you need a lot of signals, right? So this was supported. Of course, it was not that high definition, okay? But then a normal video transmission was possible with the 3G network, okay, in 2000. So if you can see, okay, 80s had its first generation, then 90s came into second generation, and 2000 gave us 3G. So you can see that there is a 10-year gap between each generation, right? So in 2010 was when 4G came out, okay, wherein the data speeds were phenomenal, okay. So theoretically, if you can read the literature, okay, it says that if you're traveling at a speed of 100 kilometers an hour, okay, you should be able to get about 100 Mbps, okay. And if you're stationary, your speed should be about 1 Gbps. So those are theoretical values. I'm very much sure that none of you have experienced 1 Gbps, even though if you're standing below the tower, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, that's the difference, or that's the thing that happens between theoretical and practical learners. You have a lot of issues, glitches that which is in, once you practically bring out these features, right? So, moving on to that, okay. And right now, a lot of research is happening, and there is something called millimeter wave, and that's called 5G networks. 5G networks. Now, I'll tell you, as the frequency increases, okay, the distance that the signal travels is very less, okay. So that is becoming a challenge now. So in 5G, okay, what is happening is the frequency is high, but then if you move out from a tower, say you're probably about 100 meters from a tower, the speed is phenomenal. But then you go about a kilometer away from the same tower, okay, the speed drops down very low, okay, that it is worse than 4G. So which means there is a lot of research that is still happening in the field of 5G, right? Now coming to the question which one of your friend Bhargav has posted with regards to the speed and the data transfer 200 Mbps, 100 Mbps. Now there's a formula actually, okay. Now if you say that your speed is 200 Mbps, okay, so you should be able to divide the 200 by 8, okay. So can someone do a quick math and tell me, divide 200 Mbps by 8 and tell me how much would you get?
25, sir.
Yes, so that should be, okay, that should be your transfer rate, okay. 200 Mbps divided by 8, okay, so that should be your transfer rate. So the rate at which the packets are uploaded and downloaded, okay, so that's your real speed, okay. So this divided by 8 is your real speed. So I hope I have answered your question, Bhargav, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So still, if we can see, some networks work really good with your handset, some do not, right? For example, now if you say, if you're subscribed to operator 1, and then you check your options, okay, or you check your transfer speeds, okay, it could vary with operator 2, okay. That's because the kind of compatibility brought in with the hardware in your phone, okay, the software update that you get for your phone, and the kind of technology that's implemented with your telecom operator, right? So ultimately, if when these two are in sync, then you get the maximum benefits. Maximum benefits in turn is nothing but your data speeds, okay. It can be more reliable network. It is expected, that when I was talking about these technologies, now in 2.5G, okay, it was expected that I get internet, but then if in case I get a call, okay, during the internet session, then the internet would be kept on hold and the call would go on, because call has higher priority than internet, okay. But in 3G that was not the case, okay. They wanted to merge both voice as well as data together, so that voice and data will go on together, okay. So that was the basic idea with 3G. So even though you're taking up a call, you should be able to browse the internet. So that was the basic idea, started off from 3G. So if you can see, these days we have something called volt, right? And you have VoIP, which is voice over internet protocol, right? So these calls are all made on the surface layer, which is your internet layer, the application layer. Okay. Now you will be studying in deep, okay, with this networks, the kind of OSI models, the 7 layers of OSI models, all these, okay, in your upcoming semesters, okay. Uh, so these applications are at the top level, right? So calls made through these applications are generally referred, okay, with the help of internet, are generally referred to VoIP, voice over internet protocol, right? Okay, so getting back to the differences between optics and copper cable, right? The bandwidth is going to be high, and it's going to reach about thousands of gigahertz, right? The copper cables have bandwidths limited by filter effect of the primary transmission line constants of resistance, conductance, capacitance, inductance. Now always keep in mind that every millimeter increase in the wire length, okay, can actually reduce, okay, the flow of current. That is because your resistance is going to increase, okay. It is going to add inductance, so whereby the performance of that line is going to be reduced every millimeter. So that's why it's very important for us to reduce the wire length as much as possible. That's of prime importance, I can say, right? So the smaller the connecting lines, okay, connecting wires, the better. Information carrying capacity is determined by bandwidth, and thus fibers have greater information carrying capacity, being able to carry several Gbps, right? So that's the advantage of having these optics compared to copper cables. Now if we look about the pros and cons of them, okay, copper cables are affected by corrosion, right, as we discussed. So it can get corroded. If it gets corroded, then can we expect the same level of performance as it was new? We can't, right? This may be by the exposure to weather. Generally, any metal that comes in contact with moisture and air, okay, it tends to get corroded. Okay, it forms with iron, it forms ferrous oxide, right? Or in the presence of corrosive liquids and gases. Okay, so the environment, if the environment is not suitable, then it gets corroded. Fibers do not have the weaknesses mentioned above, which means it is not susceptible to corrosion, and they are more resilient to changes in temperature. Okay, so you cannot expect a lot of temperature changes in optics, but then you can expect the wires getting heated up in copper cables. Fine. Over long distance, both fiber and copper transmission systems may need regenerators. Now, what are these regenerators? I think you would have heard of this term, right, with respect to your internet connections. Okay, you would probably would have heard it as repeaters, right, boosters. Okay, so this is because when signals are being transmitted from one point to another, okay, as I told you, the distance can have an impact on the quality of signal, right? So because of this, your degradation of signal can happen, and in order to stop this degradation, okay, to enhance or boost or get the signal to its original form, okay, we use something called repeaters, regenerative circuits. Okay, so these are very much needed in order to get the signals back in their normal capacity or back in their full form. Regenerators in the transmission chain require electrical power. Okay, so which means these circuits do not work on their own. They need some supply so that it picks up the signal, the boosting is done. Basically, amplifiers are employed in regenerators. Okay, so these regenerators will have amplifiers within. Fibers are insulators and cannot carry electrical current. So this is the difference, okay, you can say, when asked with regards to fibers and copper cables. The electrical power in generators must be provided in by additional copper wires in the cable assembly. So we need electrical supplies as well. Okay. Fine. Okay, so continuing our discussion with the concepts, can someone tell me what is mux? Think you all would have studied, right? You all have studied exclusively in your digital electronics, isn't it?
Selectors.
Yes.
Select
Correct.
a single from multiple inputs.
Correct. So I have a selection of inputs, and I train my system in such a way that it can understand, and it will tell, okay, as to which signal has to be taken up, right? So we will look into that if a question is asked on multiplexing. Multiplexing is a communication technique whereby number of separate information channels share a common resource such as frequency, space, or time. Okay? So this needs to be followed. Frequency, space, and time. Can you give me some examples for multiplexing? Some examples for multiplexer. Sorry?
ALU.
ALU. Okay, how does it multiplex?
No, sir. I give an example for multiplexer.
Sorry?
I give an example for multiplexers.
Okay, yes. How does it multiplex?
So various functions it consists. So we give an opcode and it chooses that one.
Okay, so even that can be treated. You have multiple inputs and then select, and then based on that, the outputs are generated. Fine. So we have a different techniques. Okay, here. So it's called space division multiplexing. Okay, and if the multiplexing is based on frequencies, then it's called frequency division multiplexing. Okay, and if it's based on time slots, then it's called time division multiplexing. And if the multiplexing is based on codes, okay, it's called code division multiplexing. Even in your communications, you have GSM and CDMA, right? So can someone tell me what is GSM? Global
Connectivity we get, the global system
for mobile communications. Right? So the normal SIM cards that we use are based on GSM networks, and if you can recall, Reliance previously used to have the CDMA networks, okay, wherein it is coded. Okay, you do not have a SIM card specifically, but then it is device based. Okay, and it is coded. It has different codes. Right. So we will look into those concepts in detail, okay, probably in our upcoming classes. Excuse me. But as of now, okay, I expect you to know the types of multiplexing, okay, and what are they, or its definitions. So media resources for communication are scarce, hence it is need. Okay, there is a need to send not just one channel of information at a time, but several channels of information simultaneously to make efficient use of media resource. So one best example can be your televisions, right? Basically all the signals are coming through, but then you are selecting a channel number, right? You are selecting the frequency number, and accordingly that gets selected, and you are viewing just one channel. Okay, of course your cable operator, okay, or your TV operator will actually give you a lot of channels, but you cannot watch all the channels at the same time, can you?
No, sir.
Not possible, right? So it creates a lot of noise, right? Because you are not able to understand anything, right? So we select a specific frequency, and whereby it gets selected, and only that channel comes through and gets displayed on your screens. So that's a best example of multiplexing. So this is affected by sharing some resource such as frequency or time, whereby the common forms are these are space, frequency, time, and code. Okay? So these are the types of multiplexing that we see in our day-to-day lives. So one last thing that we're going to discuss today is about TDM, okay, time division multiplexing. So in TDM, every channel has full use of total available bandwidth on the same physical circuit. So basically, what is TDM based on? Is it based on time? Is it based on frequency? Or is it based on code? Or is it based on space? What is it based on? It's based on time. Good. So these, the channel is divided in equal, time slots, and based on that, the calculations or the processing is done, but only for a limited time period. Okay, that is common resource that is shared. Now let us take GSM networks. Okay, these are time based. So if you are on a call for about say 1 hour or 2 hours, automatically your call gets disconnected. Why do you think so? It's because the the channel that you are occupied for a certain amount of time, okay, is to be allocated to someone else. So which means your channel is not permanent. Okay, so as soon as the disconnection happens, okay, the reallocation of another channel happens to you when you make a call. Right? So that previously occupied channel probably would be free, or based on the demand, based on the call volume, it is allocated to another call. Okay, so this is called time division multiplexing. So usually operators keep 1 hour or probably 2 hours. Previously it used to be half an hour. Okay, those days, probably about 10-15 years ago, after half an hour, the call is to get disconnected, and then they increased it to 1 hour, and then now 2 hours. Fine. Each channel is normally given the full use of circuit sequentially, and there thus meets the synchronization between transmitter and receiver. So it's not just information being passed and the work of transmitter is done. No, making sure that the receiver has received whatever the transmitter has sent. Okay, so there comes a concept called acknowledgement. Okay, so only if there is an acknowledgement, only if the receiver says, yes, Mr. Transmitter, I have received this packet. Yes, I have received packet number 3. So if and only if this kind of confirmation is given by the receiver, okay, then only the transmitter is free to send another packet of information. Okay? So we have discussed about communications, the generation of networks, okay, few concepts on multiplexing, optical fibers, copper cables, right, and a circuit where it has a comparator, amplifier, load, unregulated supply, then how it gets regulated with the help of rectifiers. So all these concepts we have discussed in this session. So probably in our next class we will continue our discussions, and anything that is needed, okay, you can let me know. And as mentioned previously, we can have a discussion on it specifically. Is that fine, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we will catch up in the next upcoming class. Okay. Fine. Thank you.